I should have known trouble was coming the moment I moved into this neighborhood. From the first day, I felt the eyes watching me, the disapproving stares of self-important people who thought they ran the place. At the center of them all was Karen Whitmore, the HOA president. She had that smug look that screamed, "I control everything." I mostly kept to myself. I had no problem following reasonable HOA rules: keep the lawn tidy, don't leave trash cans out too long, that kind of thing. But Karen, she had a different idea of what rules meant. She'd fine people for having the wrong shade of mulch or parking an inch too close to the curb. People were terrified of her. I wasn't. And that's probably why she made it her personal mission to ruin me. It started small. Petty fines left on my mailbox. Complaints about my front porch light being too bright. A warning about a non-existent noise violation. But I shrugged it off. I knew how to pick my battles. Then, one morning, I found the notice taped to my front door. Notice of eviction. I blinked. Eviction? From my own house? I skimmed the letter, my blood pressure rising with each sentence. According to the notice, I had repeatedly violated HOA regulations, failed to comply with community standards, and ignored financial obligations. Which was absolute nonsense. I wasn't behind on anything. My house was in pristine condition. I had receipts proving every fine Karen had slapped on me was either paid or successfully disputed. Yet here it was, a demand to vacate within 30 days. I stormed into the HOA office, expecting a logical conversation. Instead, I got Karen sitting behind her oversized desk with a smirk that made me want to flip the table. "Oh, you," she said, not even looking up from her computer. "Let me guess, you hear about the eviction notice? What kind of scam is this?" I snapped, shoving the paper onto her desk. "You can't just kick me out of my own home." Karen clasped her hands together and gave me a fake sympathetic nod. "Actually, we can. It's all in the HOA bylaws. When a homeowner fails to meet community standards, the HOA has the authority to take action. We've given you plenty of warnings." I could feel the smug satisfaction radiating off her. "You're making this up," I said through gritted teeth. "I've paid every fine, followed every rule." "Not every rule," Karen interrupted. She picked up a folder from her desk and flipped it open. "Let's see. Improper trash bin placement, violation of aesthetic guidelines, unauthorized security cameras, non-standard driveway color." I scoffed. "Are you kidding me? This is your reason?" Karen leaned forward, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. "You don't belong here. This community has standards." There it was. The real reason. She didn't like me, and she was using the HOA's power to get rid of me. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "You really think you can just force me out?" "Oh, I know I can," she said, smiling sweetly. "And trust me, you don't want to fight this. I always win." I stared at her, heart pounding, mind racing. She had no idea. She had no clue who she was dealing with. And she definitely didn't know who owned the entire HOA. I walked out of the HOA office without another word. Karen's smirk burned into my mind, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. She thought she had won. She thought she was untouchable. She was about to learn just how wrong she was. For now, though, I had to play it cool. I couldn't tip my hand too early. If Karen thought she had already beaten me, she wouldn't see what was coming next. Back at home, I pulled out my laptop and logged into a very specific account, one that Karen had definitely never bothered to check. The HOA board members didn't know much about who actually owned their little kingdom. They only knew that some faceless real estate investment group had acquired the development years ago and maintained control over the HOA's finances and policies. What they didn't know was that I was that faceless investor. Not only did I own my house, I owned every single property in the HOA. Karen wasn't just trying to evict me from my home. She was trying to evict the landlord of the entire neighborhood. And that was a fatal mistake. I scrolled through the HOA's financial records, checking the board's salaries, their fines, and every shady deal Karen had signed off on. I already knew she was pocketing extra money from excessive fines, but now I had proof. Oh, Karen, you really thought you could mess with me? I wasn't going to just fight back. I was going to burn her little empire to the ground. The next step was simple. I needed Karen to think she had officially won. So I played along. Over the next few days, I made a show of packing up my house. I let neighbors see me moving boxes, sighing heavily like a defeated man. A few people even whispered words of sympathy, but most just avoided eye contact. Karen had them scared. Meanwhile, I made a few very important phone calls. First, to my lawyer. Then, to the HOA's corporate office where I was the majority shareholder. And finally, to a few city officials who were very interested in how Karen had been handling community funds. 1 week later, I got a call from Karen herself. "So, have you come to your senses?" she asked, voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "Are you ready to sign the paperwork and leave our community?" I smiled to myself. "Yeah, Karen. I'll be out by the end of the week." "Oh, wonderful," she chirped. "And just a little reminder, since you're being evicted under HOA rules, you won't be able to sell your home. The HOA gets to reclaim it under our special acquisition clause. I might even move in myself." That was it. That was the moment I knew I was about to enjoy every second of what came next. "Sounds fair," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I'll see you soon." What Karen didn't realize was that in less than 48 hours, she wouldn't just be losing her job, she'd be losing everything. Karen was on top of the world. She strutted around the neighborhood like a queen, smiling smugly at my so-called defeat. I caught glimpses of her chatting with her cronies, probably bragging about how she had put me in my place. I let her enjoy it. She had no idea that the storm was about to hit. The next day, Karen called a special HOA board meeting, and I made sure to be there. I walked into the community center, keeping my expression carefully neutral as I took a seat in the back. Karen noticed me immediately. She leaned over to one of her board members and whispered something before standing up to address the room. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began, clasping her hands in front of her. "I'm pleased to announce that after weeks of dealing with certain homeowners who refused to follow the rules, we have successfully enforced our community standards. The eviction process is moving forward, and soon, we will have one less problem in our neighborhood." She shot me a sideways glance, as if expecting me to react. I didn't. "Now," she continued, "as we prepare to reclaim this property, I propose we allocate a budget to remodel the home to meet higher community standards before resale." I raised an eyebrow. Remodel? This woman was already spending money on a house she hadn't even stolen yet. One of the board members hesitated. Karen, are we sure about this? This seems a little premature. The homeowner still technically owns the house." Karen scoffed. "Not for long. The HOA has full authority to enforce the eviction. This is just a formality." I almost laughed. She really thought she had it all figured out. I slowly raised my hand. "Before we move on, can I ask a question?" Karen rolled her eyes. "What?" I leaned forward, my voice calm but firm. "Can you explain how the HOA is legally reclaiming my home when I've paid all fines and followed every rule?" Karen's smirk didn't waver. "You violated multiple regulations, and according to our bylaws, we can enforce the sale of a non-compliant property." "Oh, I see," I said, nodding. "And how do you plan to enforce that when I own the HOA?" The room went dead silent. Karen blinked. "What?" I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "Go ahead, take a look. These are the property records and corporate filings for the parent company that owns the entire HOA. You know, the one that collects your paycheck. Karen's face turned pale. She hesitated before flipping through the documents. As she read, I saw her hands begin to tremble. This, this is a joke, she whispered. No, Karen, I said, smiling. This is your joke, and I'm here to end it. Karen looked up at me, her expression a mixture of disbelief and pure terror. You're lying, she spat. Am I? I gestured toward the rest of the board. Go ahead, confirm it with the corporate office. Oh, wait, you can't, because I'm the one who approves those calls. One of the board members, an older man named Richard, cautiously took the documents and began reading. His eyes widened. Karen, this is real. Another board member gasped. He really owns the HOA? Karen shot up from her seat. No. This can't be right. He's just some homeowner. I stood up, adjusting my jacket. I'm a lot more than that, Karen. And as of now, you're fired. The boardroom erupted in whispers. Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. For the first time, she realized she had lost. But this was just the beginning. Karen stood frozen, her face drained of all color. The room was silent, save for the rustling of documents as the board members read over the proof of my ownership. You can't do this. Karen finally spluttered, her voice an octave higher than usual. I'm the HOA president. I have authority here. I leaned against the table, folding my arms. Correction. I had authority here, and now I'm taking it back. One of the board members, Richard, cleared his throat. Karen, if what he's saying is true and these documents prove that it is, then we don't actually have the power to enforce his eviction. The real HOA owner does. Another board member, Linda, looked at me hesitantly. And, since you own the HOA, that means you have the final say on everything? I smiled. That's right. And my first order of business is firing her. Karen slammed her hands down on the table. You can't fire me. I was elected by the community. I nodded. Yep, but the community doesn't actually control the HOA, does it? The real power belongs to the ownership group, which is me. Karen's lip trembled. This is illegal. You can't just take over. I pulled out another folder. Actually, I can. And not only that, Karen and I've already started an official audit on all HOA funds. I slid the folder across the table, watching as she hesitated before opening it. See, Karen, you've been skimming money from fines, pushing fake violations, and padding your salary with unauthorized fees. That's embezzlement. Karen's hand shook as she flipped through the pages. This is nonsense. You have no proof. Oh, but I do. I pulled out a flash drive. Every shady transaction, every mystery fee that conveniently disappeared into your personal accounts. I even got some homeowners to submit complaints about how they were forced to pay cash to avoid higher penalties. The board members gasped. You've been stealing from the community, Karen, I continued. And lucky for you, I'm feeling generous. I could have called the police already. Instead, I'm giving you one chance. Resign. Now. Karen clutched the folder to her chest, shaking her head. No, this isn't happening. It is, I said, and the longer you sit here, the worse it's going to get. Karen's eyes darted around the room, looking for support. But none of the board members met her gaze. She was alone. Finally, with a trembling breath, she snatched a piece of paper and scribbled her signature across it. There, she hissed, throwing it onto the table. I resign. I picked it up, examining her shaky handwriting. Smart choice. Karen turned to leave, but I wasn't finished. Oh, and one more thing, I said casually. Since you're no longer a board member, you now owe every fine you forgave yourself over the years. That's about What, $50,000? Karen stopped mid-step. What? Yep, I said, grinning. You enforce the rules so harshly on everyone else, it's only fair you follow them too. And if you don't pay up, well, we'll just have to foreclose on your house. The irony was delicious. Karen's face twisted in horror. She opened her mouth, then snapped it shut. For the first time in her miserable reign, she had no power, no control, and no way out. With nothing left to say, she stormed out of the room. I turned back to the board. Now, let's talk about making this HOA actually work for the people who live here. Karen was finished, but I still had one last surprise in store. Karen had been dethroned. Her power, her influence, and her smug attitude had all crumbled the moment she signed that resignation paper. But I wasn't done with her yet. For years, she had made life miserable for this neighborhood. She had fined people into financial ruin, bullied families into selling their homes, and pocketed money that should have gone toward community improvements. Now, it was time for her to feel what it was like to be powerless. The announcement. 2 days after Karen's downfall, I called for a community-wide meeting. Every homeowner received an official letter signed by me inviting them to hear about the future of the HOA. The turnout was massive. People who normally avoided these meetings showed up just to hear how Karen had finally been taken down. As I stepped up to the microphone, the room buzzed with anticipation. Good evening, everyone, I began. I'm sure by now you've all heard the news Karen has resigned as HOA president. A cheer erupted from the crowd. Some people even clapped. And with that, I continued, I'd like to take this opportunity to announce some major changes. The room fell silent, eager to hear what I had to say next. As of today, all unreasonable fines issued over the last 2 years will be refunded. If you've been unfairly targeted, we're making it right. Gasps echoed through the room, followed by cheers. I held up another paper. Next, the HOA's budget will no longer be used for board member bonuses or secretive administrative fees. That money will now be allocated to actual community improvements like better security, landscaping, and amenities. The applause grew louder. And finally, I said, pausing for dramatic effect, Karen is officially banned from ever serving on this HOA board again. The entire room erupted. People were laughing, clapping, even hugging each other. It was the biggest celebration this HOA had ever seen. But there was one more thing left to handle. Karen's final humiliation. Karen didn't bother showing up to the meeting. She was too busy trying to save herself. She had 48 hours left to pay off her overdue fines or face foreclosure. And she didn't have the money. See, Karen had been living off HOA funds for years. Now that her secret income was gone, she was broke. She tried everything begging, calling in favors, even trying to sell her house. But there was a problem. No one wanted to buy it. Karen had terrorized this neighborhood for so long that nobody wanted anything to do with her property. Banks wouldn't lend her money, buyers wouldn't make offers, and she was out of options. 1 week later, her house officially belonged to the HOA. And guess who bought it? Me. For a fraction of what it was worth. The day Karen was forced to move out, I made sure to be there standing on the front lawn, watching as she packed her things. She scowled at me, eyes filled with pure hatred. I hope you're happy, she hissed. I smiled. Oh, I am. But don't worry, I'll take great care of your old house. Thinking about turning it into a community center. Her mouth dropped open. You wouldn't. Oh, I would, I said, grinning. See, Karen, you spent years trying to push people out of their homes. And now, you're the one being evicted. With that, I turned and walked away, listening to the sweetest sound I had ever heard, Karen screaming in frustration as she drove off, never to return. The aftermath. With Karen gone, the neighborhood finally started to heal. The HOA was no longer a dictatorship. and homeowners actually had a say in what happened. People started enjoying their homes again. And as for me, I made sure every trace of Karen's legacy was erased. Her ridiculous rules? Gone. Her unfair fines? Refunded. Her reign of terror? Officially over. And the best part? Every time someone in the neighborhood threw a party, decorated their house however they wanted, or parked wherever they pleased, they did so with a huge smile knowing that Karen could never stop them again. Because in the end, she learned the most important rule of all. Don't mess with the real owner of the HOA. Like and subscribe for more videos like this.